Hi everybody, Peggy McGuire here, and today's English 106 topic is writing business proposals, your problem and how I can help you solve it. I'm going to talk some general guidelines first about a good business proposal, and then I'll drill down and talk about the specific components of the proposal that need to be included in order for it to be a successful ask. So first of all, what is a business proposal? A business proposal is a persuasive piece of writing. It is an argument. And that means you're going to be building on what you've already learned about persuasive messaging, but now in a much more complex document than you have written before. So, a business proposal is an argument, and it's an argument specifically for work that needs to be done. A project that's designed, for instance, to find information that someone needs, to evaluate something, a new product or a new design that somebody needs to evaluate, to solve a problem that's been identified, or to implement some change that's already been decided on, but now you need to make that change. And the question is how to do it. So, right off the top here, if those are the various kinds of projects that might require you to propose work to be done, then we want to be clear that there are two different ways that these proposals get brought into being. And the first kind is what we call a solicited proposal. So that means you're writing the proposal and you have an audience for that proposal. If the audience you're writing to is already aware of the problem to be solved or the information to be found or the change to be made, if the audience is already aware of it and wants it to happen and is supportive of the work that's needed, then the audience is going to solicit the proposal. In other words, they are going to ask someone to do the work. They're going to ask someone to give them a proposal about how to do the work. And we call that a solicited proposal. All right, so it's the audience soliciting your proposal. However, there are times when your audience may not be aware or not convinced of the need for work to be done. In this case, you're the one who has seen an opportunity or seen a problem or seen a change that needs to be implemented. And if you are the one, as the writer, who is seeing the opportunity or the problem, then you're writing what we call an unsolicited proposal. It's not coming from your audience, it's coming from you. All right? So, why do we care about this? Why does it matter whether or not you're writing a proposal that was solicited by your audience or a proposal that was not solicited by your audience but comes from you? Why does it matter? Well, it matters because if your audience has solicited the proposal, then you can assume that your audience already knows a good deal about the opportunity that has presented itself or the problem that needs to be solved, the question that needs to be answered. If your audience already has that awareness, then you as the writer of the proposal won't need to go into as much detail in order to provide background information or to persuade the reader to agree with you, remembering that this is a persuasive document. But if your audience already knows that there's a need, then you don't have to go to as much trouble to describe the need or persuade the reader to agree with your solution. All right? So, that's the case if the audience has solicited the proposal. If the audience has not solicited the proposal and therefore may not be aware of or convinced of the need, then you as the writer of the proposal need to spend a good deal more time and space in the proposal providing background information. What is the problem? Why it's a problem? When it became a problem? Or what is the opportunity? And why is it the opportunity presenting itself now? So you've got to provide more background information and you have to build your argument that not only is there a problem or an opportunity to be addressed, but that you are the best people to solve the problem, to meet the opportunity. And that's what happens in your unsolicited proposal. So that's why it matters to know the difference, because it's going to guide the decisions you make about how much information you have to include and how persuasive you have to be. All right? Therefore, the goals of writing a good business proposal are to get the project accepted to begin with, if your audience doesn't already know that this work needs to be done, and certainly in either case, whether solicited or unsolicited, you want to get yourself or your organization accepted to be the ones to do the work. That's really the thrust of the proposal. You're the best people to do the work, and your proposal shows that. To accomplish these goals, one or both of those goals, what you want to do throughout a proposal is to be stressing the benefits of what you have to say to all the audiences who would be affected by it. So you're going to really focus here on who your audience or audiences are and how they can benefit from the work that you are proposing to do. So again, we're still talking big picture here, but in general, how do you get started in writing a good business proposal? First, as always, you look at your purpose. And then, related to that, you look at your audience. So, your purpose. What problem do we want to solve? What opportunity do we want to pursue? All right? Answer that question, and you've got the purpose for your proposal. Then immediately, once you have that question answered, how does my audience see that problem or see that opportunity? Are they aware of it? What do they need from us? Because again, a good proposal is going to focus on audience benefit. So that what do they need is critical. Who are we writing to and what do they need? And keep that in the front of your mind throughout the whole process of writing your proposal. Once you've identified the problem, then the next thing you're going to have to do in a proposal is talk about, why does the problem need to be solved now? Why do we need to explore this opportunity immediately? Right? Why is this the time to do this work? And once again, especially if your audience is not necessarily aware of or strongly committed to the work to be done, then you also want to describe in your proposal, what are the consequences if we don't do this work now? If the problem is not solved now? If the opportunity is not pursued now? What are the consequences? So, you've laid out the problem. You've laid out why it's a problem to be solved now. You've thought about who you're writing to. And now, in general, what your proposal does is describe exactly what you propose to do in order to address the problem or pursue the opportunity. How are we going to do that? And in your proposal, you are going to talk in very specific detail about the methods you'll use to pursue the opportunity to solve the problem, why they're the best methods to use, what specific topics and subtopics we're going to be investigating, how we're going to gather whatever data we need in order to come up with good recommendations, and, very important in a business environment, how we can be sure that we will complete the work in the time that's allotted to us. As is almost always the case in business writing, we're thinking time and money. So if I say I can do a piece of work that costs this much and will take this much time, I need to reassure my audience that I will in fact be able to complete the work with that time and in that budget. Okay? We continue with exactly what we propose to do by talking about, can we actually do this work? And in your proposal, you'll be talking about yourself or yourselves, the key people who would be doing the proposed work. What knowledge those people have that's important to the proposed work? What experience do they have that's relevant? What resources do we have that make it possible for us to do the work we're proposing to do? Why us and not someone else? What are the benefits of hiring me, my company, my organization to do this work as opposed to someone else? All right, here's where you're building your argument about why you are the best person, your group are the best people to do the proposed work. And then finally, okay, so we've talked about in a good proposal, you articulate the problem clearly. You say how you're going to go about getting the information you need to solve the problem. And finally, what exactly are we going to deliver to you if you hire us to do this work? And that means you will be very clear about when you will complete the work. And when I say very clear, as you'll see shortly, I'm talking about including a detailed schedule and timeline that shows when each phase of the work will be done. All right, so you don't make general statements about this. You are very detailed and very specific about when the work will be done. What products will we provide? In other words, tangible things that you're going to hand over to your audience. In business, these are often referred to as deliverables. What will we deliver to you and when? And, as in most cases in the real world, if you're proposing to do work for which you expect to be paid, you will also then talk about how much you're going to charge for the work. And in that spirit, you will include a detailed budget that is realistic enough that you won't go over it, because you don't want to go over budget. All right? So again, these are not general statements. These are very specific and detailed ways of saying, we know how much this is going to cost. Here's the number, and we're going to stay within that number to get the work done. You want to reassure your reader that that's true. All right? Then a couple of more general insights about how you write a good business proposal, and that has to do with the writing style. First of all, a proposal must be clear and easy to read. All right? And that means using language that you expect your audience to understand. Again, here's where it's important to know how much your audience knows about the problem or the opportunity already. Because if your audience is using particular kinds of language to describe the problem or opportunity, then you know that person is comfortable with that language, so you can use it also in your proposal. In fact, you need to use it to make that connection to your audience. Use the language that the audience is already using and that you know feels comfortable, especially when it comes to technical language. You know, you don't want to be overly technical, but you also want to be able to match the level of technicality that your audience feels comfortable with. So, bottom line, language that you expect your audience to understand. All right? Also, what you say needs to be defensible. In other words, if you say you can do something, you can be sure that you can do it. And if you make any generalizations or conclusions within your proposal, that you support them with some kind of evidence. So already, even before you actually start doing the work, if you're making any kind of general statements or concluding statements, you need to support them. All right? Your writing is you focused, once again, stressing the benefits to the audience throughout the proposal. And the writing is appropriate. You use the expected format, which we'll talk about in a moment. And you choose words that make you sound confident without bragging on the one hand, acting like you're too confident, or hedging, sounding like you're avoiding. Right? You don't want either of those tones to come across. You want yourself to sound intelligent, informed, and confident that you can do the work. And finally, the writing needs to be correct. You must edit, you must proofread carefully to make sure that what you are handing over as a deliverable is clean and correct. The best way to get a proposal rejected is for it to be full of punctuation and spelling errors. Because if I read that, if I'm your audience and I'm thinking about hiring you, and I see a lot of errors in the writing of the proposal, why would I hire you? Why, if you couldn't even take enough care to produce a clean, correct, well-written proposal, then how do I trust that you're going to take care with the project itself? So as we've said before, I know that the correctness and the cleanness of the document is an indicator of your respect for your audience, and also your belief that your audience is serious in the work that they want to get done. So you need to show that level of seriousness in the proposal by making sure that it's clean and without any kind of noticeable error. So please edit and proofread. Okay. So, one last piece about overall organization of a proposal. Specifically, a proposal to do some kind of research work that's going to end up with a report. And that is, in fact, what you all are going to be doing in this course. But when your proposal is to do research that will lead to a final report, your goal is to argue, first of all, that the problem, the opportunity, the topic is a meaningful one to the audience. But while meaningful, not too big to realistically complete in the time you have. So you have to come across as understanding the scope of the work to be done, and that you can do it in the time you have. That means you fully understand the problem, the topic, the opportunity. The methods you're proposing will in fact get you to the information you need to solve the problem, to address the opportunity. And you know, once you get that information, you know how to analyze it. You know how to read and study and think about that information in a way that will lead you to coming up with sound recommendations. And finally, again, you can produce the report by the deadline. All right. So that's the overall message that you want to send in your proposal. Now let's talk about the pieces of the proposal. And there are 3 main sections to a business proposal. The first one is short and sweet. You just take a couple of sentences without any heading information to summarize the topic and the purpose of the report that you are proposing to write. So you're going to identify the problem or the opportunity, and you are going to talk about the purpose of the report that you are proposing will come out of your research. Again, short, sweet, couple of sentences, no header. And by the way, as I go through these final this final part with the 3 sections of the proposal, there is a very nice model that you can look at in your textbook in the chapter 17 of your textbook, where the information talks about writing business proposals. So there is a model in there. If you want to follow along, you might want to do that. And you'll see the very first thing that happens in the proposal is just a few sentences that briefly and nicely summarize what the issue is and what's the purpose of their proposed work to be done. Okay? But that's it for section 1. Right up front, your reader wants to see what this is all about. Now, the largest section of the proposal comes next in section 2, the body of the proposal. Now here, you are going to use a heading for each section, and each section will be relatively brief Although, as we see the very first bullet here, this is going to have to do with whether or not your proposal is solicited or unsolicited. Back to that. Because the first section, the first piece of section 2, is where you describe the problem or the opportunity. In a few sentences, you talk about what is this opportunity or problem, why does it need to be addressed, and is there any relevant background or history that the audience should know. Here's where you make your decision about how much does your audience already know. Has the audience solicited this proposal? If so, you don't need to say too much about background or history. If the audience has not solicited the proposal, you're going to need to do more with describing why this is a problem and how it became a problem. So that relevant background and history is going to be much more significant if this is an unsolicited proposal. Right. Second section, and notice I've underlined what I consider to be good headings for each section. You can change them if you like, but just make sure that they're clear and the focus is the same. So, second part, feasibility. Sometimes a problem simply cannot be solved. Sometimes an issue is just too difficult. People have tried to figure out a solution in the past and just haven't been doing it, haven't been able to do it. Sometimes you have to talk about whether or not, in fact, a solution can be found to a problem, or whether or not this is a time and we have the resources to pursue this opportunity now. So it really depends on the issue that you're dealing with and how complicated it is, how controversial it is, what the previous history has been of people trying to address it. So you don't have to have a section on feasibility if you're not dealing with that kind of issue. But if you are, you may need to add this part of section 2 that actually discusses whether or not at this point in time, with your current resources, a solution can be found or an opportunity can be pursued. Next part of section 2, identify your key audiences. If if somebody solicited the proposal, you know that that's going to be at least one of your key audiences, but there may be other people who end up seeing this proposal or end up being impacted by the proposal and the work that comes out of the proposal. So you want to make sure you've thought about and identified all of the key audiences, and then for each one of those audiences, you've described what is the major concern or need for that audience and why would they benefit from the work that you propose to do. All right. Next section, the topics you're going to investigate. What specific questions will we answer in the report that we prepare for you? What issues will we explain? What aspects of the opportunity will we discuss? Etc. So specific things that you are going to research. Then, once you've talked about the what you're going to research, the next section is about your methods and procedures. How are you going to research? How are you going to get the information that you need? What questions are you going to ask? How will you get the answers? Are you going to be interviewing people? If so, who? Are you going to be doing surveys? If so, of whom? Are you going to be using published or online sources of information? If so, which? Again, this is a decision that you make based on what issue you are pursuing and what is the best way to get the information you need to answer the question, to solve the problem, to pursue the opportunity. So it's up to you, but you need to clearly describe what methods or procedures you're going to use. And now comes the self-marketing piece, where once you've described what work you're going to do and how you're going to do it, now, why you? What are your qualifications? What are your resources? What facilities do you have available to you? What kind of knowledge and skills do you have that will help you complete the work you are proposing to do? Is all the information available to you? If not, where will you get help if you need it? So this is where you convince your reader that you're the best people or person to do the work. Okay? And then, as I said earlier, a very important part of section 2 will be your outline of your work schedule. And here I strongly suggest that you don't just write a narrative, but you actually use a visual aid like a chart or a calendar, and on that chart or calendar you clearly list who is going to do each piece of the work process, the total time that that person will spend on that piece, and the date you expect that the entire activity will be completed. All right, so you're just really breaking down the work into a clear message about what's going to be done, by whom, and by when. All right. And that's really the big chunk of this proposal, because now section 3 is also very brief, as was section 1, but very, very important. And this is what we call a call to action, and that will be your header for your final section. Again, just a few sentences, but 2 very important messages. First of all, and this is really important as a measure of respect to your audience, that you say with sincerity that you would welcome any suggestions from your audience for any ideas that might improve the plan that you have just laid out, the proposal that you have just made. Is there anything that we're missing or that you would like to add? Please feel free to do that. Remembering that if it is a solicited proposal, especially, that the person soliciting the proposal is the expert here, right? It's the person who has identified a problem or an opportunity that knows about that problem or opportunity. So you want to ask that person for any further suggestions or ideas that might improve your planned work that you are describing in this proposal. So don't forget to do that. And then the other message to send is to say, may we do this work? To finish by saying, please approve our proposal so we can start getting the work done to solve your problem, to pursue this great opportunity. So that call to action is a measure of respect to the reader, and also your request for approval of your proposal so that you can begin your work. And that is a proposal. Remember, just a couple of ending thoughts. When you are writing a proposal, you have not yet done the work. You are proposing to do the work. All right, and you're laying out in very clear ways how you're going to do it, so that your reader comes away feeling confident that you know what you're doing, that you can do what you said you'd do, and that you're the best people to do it. And that's what makes a good, effective business proposal. So, till next time, take care.